Oh shit. See, this is why yeah, it says live O2.
Okay,
Live.
good. Press that. And now we're live. Are you live now? We're
No.
live.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. I have my friend Wendy Thompson, who is a real estate agent here in Wilmington. So we're doing things a little bit differently today. We are talking about why you don't always have to work together. I think this industry's a hard industry, and everybody in it seems to think that they can just, they don't want to share anything because Lord only knows Wendy might steal somebody of mine or something. But in a market where, there's a lot of buyers and sellers, so you don't have to be in competition with each other. It is best to collaborate. So, Wendy, thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So to start off with, one thing that Wendy and I were just talking about was, what is the quote? Wendy, I have to put on my glasses to see it. The rising tide
floats all boats.
Thank you. Floats all boats. And you were relating that how?
So Jennifer and I work for two very different types of brokerages, and I'm with Real, and that is more of a virtual brokerage, and Jennifer is with Remax Executive here in Wilmington. We're both in Wilmington, but she has a little bit more of a office environment where she's getting a mix of national and local news. And so we get more on the Real side because we're virtual and we don't have a brick and mortar office here. We get more national news. So Jennifer has been so kind this whole year that every time she does a training for her team, she invites my team. And we have two very different teams. She's got a much larger team. I have a small team. But we do a decent volume of business. So our paths and our team member paths cross a lot. And we know each other all very well through different transactions and stuff. So, but Jennifer has been so kind to include my team in with her team for trainings like we did a DOT training. And so we learned all about what was coming down the pipe for Wilmington and how long it's been in the planning. And those were all super valuable for us. And it's not information that we would easily get. It's definitely something that we would have to hunt down to find. So, that made my team better, stronger. It makes Jennifer's team better, stronger. I think it also sets the example for the people that we work with. That, we are competitors in the sense that we are all in the same field, but we are not competitors in the sense that we're putting our egos before the better of the industry or our clients. And there are agents that do that. We do not. And it's just a fundamental difference in how we operate.
No, because I think it's important. It is important to raise everybody up. And I love with you and Denise, come to our things, because also, guess what? It makes us better too, because we can also learn from you. Right. So it just brings up the industry as a whole. The other thing it does is, you need to have good relationships with your local agents. Because like I said to you earlier, if I have a listing and I see one of your team members is on the other side, I love that because I love y'all. Same thing. If I have a buyer or anybody from my team brings it to one of your listings, it's going to go smoother, right? Than an agent that you're always just fighting with over.
Right. That it's competitive. Yeah. So the expression or the comment that I made earlier is that every transaction should feel like a win-win for the buyer and the seller at closing. And there are agents in this market, and there's not that many of them, that you do feel like you're playing a basketball game and it's all about who's going to win. And at the end of the day, those transactions are the hardest because you're not collaborating on trying to find solutions, on trying to get people in the right seat. You're just, sitting in your corner trying to hold your position.
That's right.
And we, at the end of the day, we service the community. So we want people to walk away feeling really good about what they just sold, feeling really good about what they just purchased, and not feeling like they lost or they got beat up in the process. So, it really should feel like a win-win. And if you're collaborating with an agent that you have a relationship with, they're going to be sensitive to that. They're not about their ego. It's not about, doing something that makes it harder for you to do business so that you never want to work with them again. And I can think off the top of my head of 3 agents that when I have to go look at a house that they have listed, I'm automatically on the defense because I've been there.
The same.
It's probably the same 3 agents.
I'm sure we have our same 3 agents on that list. But you're you're 100% right. Right. At the end of the day, if I bring a buyer and my buyer wants to buy your listing and your seller wants to sell the listing, why are the agents fighting with the
Yeah.
agents, right? We need to be working a way to collaborate to get the buyer what they need and get the seller what they need. Because at the end of the day, seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy. Agents need to go to collaborate, good word, to get in that to make sure they are properly representing their people. And the best way to represent them is if you have that communication, that open
Right.
communication.
And our job really is to be a facilitator. And so you're not facilitating if you're inserting your ego into the transaction so that it's come down.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that just doesn't really, that doesn't move the ball forward for anybody. And it does leave you, just like I said, I can think of 3 people and you said I can think of 3 people. I mean, this is not a secret. And this was one of the things when I got into real estate, I thought, oh, for sure, this whole keeping confidence and people not sharing information at the water cooler, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was going to be the biggest baloney. I thought people would talk, and they really don't. I mean, your information is really protected. It's very private. We never disclose anything about a client or anything like that. But at the same time, our job is to facilitate the transaction and try to get everybody through the process and not insert ourselves in that. There's no reason for it.
No, you're 100% accurate, right? And to be able to talk your clients off a cliff if needed, and sometimes that's needed too. For instance, I have one right now where the argument is over $2,000 in earnest money. And that's really silly because it's all refundable. So, I mean, and it's my buyers that are being silly about it. So I have to go back to the buyers and be like, hey, where is this coming from? But just having that open communication with them too. But even recently, so I had a listing, and most people out there probably won't remember it. It was about a year ago. You probably do, if you remember my beautiful listing that was on the water with the gorgeous pictures of all the sunsets. And it was only on the market 10 days. And we actually brought a full price cash buyer to it. So Katie from my team had the buyer and I had the seller, and it did not end well at all. To where, anyway, we won't go into the details about it because it's currently listed with a different company. So interestingly enough, I had a buyer that called me that wanted to see that house that I had listed that fell out because the buyer was suing everybody. Right. So I don't have the listing now. Now a different company has it, but I now have a buyer.
And this is a year later. This is
yes.
The house is back on the market with somebody else. Right. So it's a long time has gone by.
Yes. But I knew that I should not show that property or anybody from my team, because part of what the seller wanted is the seller was also present at most of the showings. So anyway, long story short, I called Wendy and I was like, hey, what are you doing today at 3? Can you please show these buyers for me? And not only did she show the buyers, right? She was trying to help the buyers fall in love with Wilmington, took them to Carolina Beach. They had a drink, they were talking. And at the end of the day, she calls me and the buyer back and we're like, hey, I'm turning it back over to you. They're your buyers. I was just trying to help them fall in love with the area. So that's kind of what I mean with collaboration and working together. Like I knew that I couldn't show the property. So I asked Wendy to do it. Wendy not only showed the property, took it another step, but then also put them back in my lap and didn't try to sell the buyer. And that's another thing. You don't want to burn those bridges with local agents, right? No. If somebody asks you to do a favor like that, that is what you want to do because it you have a long time working together.
You do. And, you asked me like, what makes a good, co-partner, co-broker in these deals. And that's one of them is, the agent that will go the extra mile for the transaction. So I just closed one in the same neighborhood. And the agent on the buy side, she's a very established agent here, very nice. She was like, do you want me to take your lockbox back to your office for you, to save me the trip of having to go pick it up? I mean, it's just little things like that that really start to establish a relationship between people. That's right. Being willing to help out. And even the agent that on the listing that Jennifer had that is now under, is now listed by another agent. We had houses in the same neighborhood that were for sale. And when he saw that I had an open house, he hung around, came down, walked around my house, We talked about how we could collaborate together to get both houses sold, whether it's, doing an open house together because they're on the same street and you can bring more people in, but he's a great guy. And so he was like, what can we do to help each other out? And and we're from two different brokerages, two different, worlds, so to speak. And, but he's somebody that I would be like, oh, I would love to bring the buyer to your listing because you're a great guy and I would love to work with you.
Well, and you just made another good point talking about collaboration and working together, right? To have two open houses or more in the same neighborhood with two different companies, that means you're going to be advertising to two different pockets of people. You're going to be talking to two different pockets of people. Ideally, you have twice as many people come in to the open house, right? So all of this is to better serve the buyers and the sellers.
That's right.
And it works better for everybody if you have that communication between your local agents and clients.
And I would say this too. One of the things that I've really enjoyed in getting to know Jennifer over the last year and a half, and is that if I had a listing that I was struggling to get sold, and I feel like I could call her and say, hey, I've done this, and we are still not there, and we've lowered the price. Is there anything you guys do that we haven't done that you would recommend? And I think it's very vice versa, because we've gone to each other with, hey, I'm looking at this investment property. What do you think of that? Because
I did do that. I did that with two pieces of property. I was thinking about buying for myself, and I was like, Wendy, because I know that you have a lot of investment properties. I'm like, hey, I need to pick your brain. I'm having a little bit of cold feet. Am I realistic? Am I just scaring myself, or should I have cold feet? And I'm so thankful that I didn't buy. So.
Right. And you don't know what you don't know. So we know a lot about the real estate transactions because that's what we do in our day-to-day business. But we don't necessarily are always buying investment property. And again, you may have a client that is interested in Airbnbs in Carolina Beach, and you can, say to your client, I don't own any, but this other agent I know does, and she could give you the skinny on all the do's and don'ts of owning an Airbnb in Carolina Beach.
That's right.
And it just makes you that much more valuable because our clients don't care where the information comes from. They just want the information.
That's 100%. And having people and I'm sorry, any agent out there that's watching this, there's like, I would never ask another agent because I know everything. You haven't been in real estate long enough. Because once you've been in it a long time, you realize there's so many things that you don't know, and it's impossible to know everything, right? I think it's the people that are like, I don't need help, that end up in trouble.
It's also, when we talk about brokerages and, sort of being in different places, every brokerage is different. And I've been with 4 since 2013. And I know that sounds like I've moved around a lot, but I really haven't. But I started with one brokerage, and quite honestly, I didn't feel like anybody wanted to volunteer anything. And I'm a pretty open person, so I don't think I'm particularly difficult to talk to, but nobody really wanted to share. And that was a sticking point for me. And part of the reason why I left and I went to another brokerage, and that was shockingly, it was like an open book. People were like, here's my listing presentation. Here's all my stuff. And part of it was just their business model, but it was really different. And it was definitely a place where there was a lot of collaboration. If you wanted it, people would just give you whatever you wanted. And not every firm, is going to be that way. And they all, everything has its own culture to it. There's reasons why you are at different places, but it was very interesting to me as a relatively new agent to see the difference between I'm not sharing anything and I'm barely saying hello when I see you to like, hi,
I'm a book, take whatever you want.
Stuff. Right. Yeah. It was really different. So,
but now you're back to a company that doesn't do collaboration.
It doesn't, because we're kind of, I would say this, we're a little bit siloed with the brokerage that we work for because we don't have a brick and mortar. However, we came to that brokerage on the heels of a bunch of agents who we have wonderful relationships with, who we can absolutely tap into. So, if we're going on vacation and there's nobody to mind the store, I can ask an agent who's another real agent. We're not in the same office, but I can say, hey, can you guys, take our showings for us while we're, out of for a week.
People to help you.
You have people to help. Yeah. Because, the way you're listing in your buyer's agency agreement, it's with the firm. So it's a little tricky to say to somebody outside your firm, hey, can you go, show this house or do my open house for me, because they're not really allowed to. It's right. You have to have a special, agreement on that.
Although you did for me.
I did. I did. We broke the rules a little, but again, it was in the spirit of I'm just going to open the door, show them the house, and that's as far as we'll go. But
that was nice of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But I think that as the more you do this, the longer you're in real estate, and maybe this is also sort of a pro and con between a new agent and an experienced agent. There's a whole lot of pros and cons there. But, an experienced agent is going to know other agents because it really is the 80-20 rule. So you're running into the same agents transaction after transaction. And my favorite thing to hear when I go to show a house and the listing agent will reach out to me and say, I'm so excited that you're showing my house because I'm really hoping you bring my buyer because I've always wanted to work with you. Rhonda Kelly. I'll never forget her saying that to me. I was like, you do? It just made me feel so good that she was excited to do business with me.
100%.
And that makes a big difference.
Well, it makes a big difference. Like, right, if you have two agents that get along, that's going to be an easy transaction. And it's going to be easier for the buyers, the sellers. The buyers going to end up where everybody's going to end up at that happy spot where everybody's happy at the end of it. Buyers are going to get what they need. Sellers are going to get what they need. And you're going to make it go through protecting your people, right? Making sure that they do get what they need. But it's easier to get somebody what they want and need if you're not put up a huge wall because you're fighting with that person over something trivial.
Right. Well, you have an established trust. So you have got buyers and sellers who don't know each other. They don't trust each other. And sometimes they will, you're going to say, oh, the buyer's willing to do this or the seller's willing to do that. And they'll go, what's their ulterior motive? Because people can be a little bit suspicious. But if you have two agents that know each other and you say, no, there's no ulterior motive. I know her. She's a straight shooter. This is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. And it just brings it down a notch. Buying and selling a house is stressful. Doesn't matter how you do it. There's a lot of money on the line. It's not a basketball game. It's real lives. It's real money. And, if you can take some of that pressure down, I think you're doing a really good service to your client.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah. And back to within the industry, working together and teaching each other and collaborating with things like the DOT or whatever it is out there. It also brings up the industry professionals.
Yes.
Which is good too, right? We want to make sure that everybody on the other side of our deal has the same kind of power and knowledge. This makes it easier.
Right. So how does an agent win with you, Jennifer? What do you have to do to be somebody that you're like, oh, I can't wait to work with her again?
Communication. Pick up the phone and call, right? And I think it's super important to establish that connection immediately, not when there's a problem. So, hey, Wendy, I really appreciate the offer on 123 Main Street. It looks really good. However, we, right, you go back to negotiate whatever it is the seller wants or buyer wants. We want higher due diligence or earnest money or whatever. You get it negotiated. Wendy, I'm super excited to work with you. I cannot wait. This is going to be fantastic. So I think opening up and having that open communication, usually before I write an offer, if I write an offer and I have the buyer, I'm going to call the listing agent. I'm going to call Wendy and say, hey, Wendy, is there anything special your sellers are looking for? What are their trigger points? And then I make sure that I'm going to address those trigger points. Most of them are pretty common, like price and due diligence and time frame. But sometimes there's things outside of that. My seller needs to sell, but would like to sell in the next 30 days, but needs to rent back for a month. Right. Whatever it is, to have that open communication in the very, very beginning.
Well, and thinking again, like, if we're thinking, 20% of the realtors are doing 80% of the business and we're seeing the same names, same faces all over, all the time. The other thing that you see when you're working with sort of the top 20 in a market is a lot of agents, myself, you as included, we all have transaction coordinators. So, it's very easy to just put it under contract and turn it over to the transaction coordinator. And you have to stay in the game. You have to still have conversations and feel like you're still talking to the other agent because, you can go through a transaction where you really don't have any communication with the other agent until you're negotiating, and typically negotiating on repairs.
Yep.
So I think just like what you said, it's important to you have a conversation, get on the same page, make some common ground. Hey, let's get this done together, establish the direction that you want to take the transaction, and then work towards it as a team instead of working towards it, in a very individual way. It doesn't prevent you from negotiating hard for your client.
It actually makes you a better negotiator.
I think
Because
so.
if I could get you to like me, then you're going to accept a little bit more when I tell you this needs to be done, right? If you're mad at me in the very beginning because I call and I'm a bitch and I'm like yelling at you about something stupid and we're not even under contract, how is that going to play out in the next 30 days?
Right. That's right. That's right.
Because you do have people that do that.
You do. And you also have people that you put especially when you're the buyer's agent. I think this is, and I know Denise has run across this a couple of times, that I know every time she shows a house that is listed by this one particular agent, it's like she almost doesn't even want to write the offer, because she knows that once she submits that offer and that offer's accepted, she will never get a call back again. It'll be 5:00 on due diligence and she's still trying to get him on the phone and there's no response. And so, again, establishing a relationship is good for your client. It doesn't matter. A lot of these clients too. I mean, I know that our firms want us to say that these clients are choosing based on brokerage. They're not choosing based on brokerage. They're choosing based on referral from somebody who knew us 90% of the time, might be a Zillow lead or something like that. But I know my business is mostly referral based. So it's somebody who's recommended us, and they could be referring us in from a different firm in a different state.
That's right.
And they just want to know that their client's going to be taken care of, because you don't want to refer somebody to somebody just because they're in the same brokerage as you. And then they call you back and they say, wow, the agent you sent me to really was terrible and didn't respond and didn't want to show me anything, and that kind of thing. So we picked
a whole nother collaboration.
That's a whole other collaboration.
But that's important too. Communication. I think communication overall is super important.
Right. 100%.
But yeah, I think so. How about with you? Is that what you would say? Like, how would I win you over when I wrote an offer?
I do think that. I think there's a couple of things. I think the willingness to work together is huge for us. Hey, I'm in this with you. Let's get this done. I think there's that sense of let's get this done. We're both in this together. And I know there's a sense that, realtors make a lot of money and the commission's a lot, but there is a lot of work that goes into this. And we do have bills to pay. And, one of my early conversations with Jennifer, we did not know each other. She called on one of my listings to ask a question. I was sitting at a very quiet open house and I said, how's your business? And she was an open book. She was, and here's March of 2024, 2024? No, maybe. Yeah, March of 2024. And she, and the market's wobbly. And I'm feeling in my small team that the market is a little wobbly. Interest rates are up. People are kind of in this waiting game, and I said, how's your business? And she shared, and, I know her as this woman who runs this big team. And here she shared her stuff, and we were having the exact same experiences. Yeah. And so it was validating. It was like, okay, it's not me. It's the nature of the beast. And it was open, and it allowed me to share, and, it allowed me to ask questions, and she asked questions. And I mean, I think it took us an hour and a half, and we were like, hey, do you want to, go for a drink or.
Okay. And we did. And then I went over to your hot tub for a girls' day, watching the sunset, which was super fun. Got to meet your husband in person, which was awesome too. But it's all, again, right. It's about collaboration. And I'm sorry, like there's nothing that I do that is that
top secret. We're not launching the space shuttle here. We're just trying to sell a house.
That's exactly right. So why not share? So of course, when you asked me, I was like, oh my God, somebody that really cares. Let's talk.
Exactly. And, people move around in this industry as their needs change. So again, as a newer agent, I started someplace where I knew someplace and knew someone. And then I moved on to an agent, to a firm that was all about training. And I thought that was the next move for me. And then I moved on to something that was more in alignment with how, I live my life. And so that's why I'm with the firm that I'm with. And you're going to leave people along the way. They're going to stay at a firm, or they're going to move on to another firm. And so being siloed into, I only talk to the brokers in my firm, no, people don't stay put. They will move on to where, where's the next best move for their business as we change our business models.
No, you're 100% accurate.
You
Yeah.
don't want to shun somebody because they've left your firm. That's
No, because then, I mean, holy cow, back to your point, you would whittle down to nobody left because people do change.
people do change, and you need to. So
Yep, absolutely. Well, Wendy, thank you.
you're
And I
very
love collaborating with you. And now the biggest thing is that Wendy has gotten a group of 20 plus agents.
women. Some are agents.
What?
Some are agents. Some are just people.
Yes. That we're
Not
all going to Croatia in 2026. So super excited that I got invited to the trip. My daughter Grayson and I are both invited. So we are hopping on this Croatia trip.
We're super excited.
Yes. So
It takes that relationship just to the next level. When you've gone on vacation with your co-brokes, I mean, really, are you ever going to be difficult after that? Of course not.
Yeah. So how many agents are going?
Let's see, 6 of us.
Okay.
6 agents, and then we've got quite a few that are bringing their adult children, and then I actually have a couple of my clients are going. We've got a couple of people that are bringing like their oldest best girlfriend, which I think is kind of cool. We've got weird mixes of like my oldest friend is going, and then my kids are going, your daughter's going, my daughters are going, my friends' daughters are going. There's quite a few mother-daughter groups going on it. But I do think, it's funny in talking to, when I was getting the trip started, I was calling the agents that I know and love to work with.
Yeah.
I actually shared one of them with you. I said, oh, I've asked her. And you said, oh, I love her too.
I love her too, please.
Yes. Yeah. So, we do have some crossover. And I didn't think about even making this a, brokerage specific event.
Yeah.
This was just, who would I want to go and spend 10 days in Croatia with? And,
I'm glad I got
those are your coworkers, so to speak. They really are your coworkers in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah. But we're all from different firms, which is nice too. I like that better, actually.
The other thing too is being from, each firm is sharing different information about the direction of the market. And even like my next door neighbor is the general manager of BMW Porsche. And I mean, these are big corporations that do a lot of market research. And I'm saying to him, what are they telling you about the direction of the market? Yeah. Are they telling you to expect a strong fourth quarter? Because, it all kind of works together. Interest rates affect the car dealerships. If you remember COVID, there was, or I'm not COVID, but when you remember the Great Recession, those dealership lots were empty. I mean, they were 100, real estate was affected. They were affected. And even during COVID, that, people weren't moving around so much. So it's been really interesting to be able to tap into what is RE/MAX telling you about what to prepare for as we go into the second half of 2025. What is Porsche telling him to prepare for?
Yeah.
What is Real telling me to prepare for? Being able to share those insights, I think, are super beneficial because it's our job to guide the market and to guide our clients to not just, is this the house you want to be? I mean, I always say anybody can show you a house that has pretty granite. That is not why you're hiring me. I'm not the TikTok dancing realtor. You're not hiring me. What you're hiring me for is because you want me to be smart and help you make what is for most people the single biggest financial decision of their life.
That's right.
Not to dance for you, And so these are the types of things that make us, better, smarter, faster.
I love it. And that's why we collaborate. Because what you're being told or what I'm being told, I'm sure, is slightly different. And then to learn from each other and grow and help our clients from that.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. See, were you nervous? You were nervous in the beginning, but it ended up being fine, right?
It's like everything else. The technology, whenever you try some new technology, it's always the bumpiest part of it. Is this working? Did it go on? And that piece of it. Of course, we realized at 4:30 that the Wi-Fi signal here in my house is not as strong as it needs to be, or at least on my laptop it isn't. But you fix it and you move forward. So
see, well, I appreciate you and thank you. This is my first time I had somebody local on here, so I might hone in and get some other people local. I love it.
I think that's a great idea.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm trying.